Good afternoon, everybody. Afternoon.
Hi.
Thank you all for being here today. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Betsy Knowles, and I'm on the board of the Women Law Students Organization. We have been working on this event for months, and I had the great pleasure of working with Laura on it. When she first came to us with the idea and with the plan, you could hear the excitement in her voice. The way she talked about creating a panel and a network of women attorneys, students, and judges was truly inspirational. She put her whole heart into this event, and it's truly the result of her hard work. I'm so happy all of you could attend today and hear from this great group of panelists and pay tribute to her memory. Now we have Professor Belmont as our moderator tonight. For those of you who don't know her, she is our director of the Community Legal Practice Center, and she has been truly influential in forming the topics for this evening. So without further ado, Professor Belmont.
So I'll warn you of one thing. I didn't get to go to Pittsburgh this weekend because I had to travel to South Carolina. So this is actually the first time I've talked about Laura in front of people, and I'm supposed to be having a nice subject thing. I'm already feeling that this is happening to me, but I do want you all to know that I feel personally really blessed to be standing here with you, bringing to fruition something that Laura worked so hard on for so long. Now, those of you that know me and have been taught by me know that I'm not a notes kind of person, but I have notes, and you're going to forgive me if I use them as I talk to you. So, like Betsy said, I run a clinic here, and Chris Wagner's in my clinic, and for that reason I became pretty close to Laura this year, just because that's the way we roll in the CLPC. And I was thrilled when she asked me to moderate this panel. I think it's a great topic. I thought she was a wonderful young woman, and it really breaks my heart that she's not here in the well of this court today to introduce me and to introduce our panelists. But I'm confident that she would want us all to be here, and I'm really glad that you all have come to do this work together. Now, also, I want to be clear that for her, this panel isn't just about ideas. The ideas are important, the discussion is really important, but it's about relationships and the building of relationships and the forming of relationships in the community of women in the bar and the community of men that support women in the bar. And so that's why this is going to be a conversation. We want you to participate in a conversation with these four interesting women who come from very different backgrounds. They're bringing to you a lot of different things today and a lot of different ideas and experiences. The other thing that I want to reflect on before we get underway is that one of the gifts I think that Laura left to us is that she really represented and embodied a young woman who's poised on the edge of the profession to do really wonderful, wonderful things. If I were to say to you, hey, before we undertake this conversation, let's think about what it would look like to be the young woman who could have it all and do it all. And what would it look like to carry that through in the profession? Who would you imagine? Imagine that young woman. And if Laura were standing there introducing me, you would be thinking, oh, her, obviously. And then I would embarrass her, and she would be embarrassed. And that is what would have happened, but it's true. And so when we talked about going forward with this panel, one of the things we talked about is that we didn't want to trivialize what the loss that we've experienced, the loss of her life, but that it seemed like the topic of this panel is really intimately connected to who she is, which was a young woman who was fully committed to engaging excellence, to service, to having it all, and to learning to have it all. And the reason that it's really important for you guys to be having this conversation now is because all of y'all are doing it all, and then you're going to go out into the profession and you're going to take on even more. You're going to take on clients. You'll have children or raise children. You'll have aging parents. There will be more losses and tragedies in your life because that's just what life dishes out to us. And learning how to be all we can be in that context, we're all poised on the edge of that every day, is a really important piece of the work that we're doing. So When I say this is a conversation, I mean it. You have a program in front of you, and it lists some topics that we're just going to work our way through. We may not get to them all, but you might want to take a look at them and see, is there something here that I'd like to talk about that I'm particularly engaged in? Because I'm going to force you to ask questions. These women are here to talk among themselves and to share their experience, but they really want to hear from you. And I'm not just making that up. They just told me that in the judge's chamber. So while I would say that even if it weren't true, it is in fact true. So I want you to participate with them in the work that they're doing as we talk about the issues that we're going to engage today. Now, I was thinking about Laura, and how do I capture this? And what I came up with is doing it all effortlessly and having it all deservedly. And that's really what she looked like to me. You know, she had this wonderful man, and she did all these wonderful things, and she's going off into the future, and I thought, is this real? Can she do it? And I think that that's a struggle that we all have. I know I, as a mother and a professor and a lawyer and a person who does too much, struggles with. And so I wanted to start there. And before we do that, because I just realized I forgot to introduce our panelists, I want each of our panelists, because I was going to start with Kai, who's at the end on this topic. But why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself? We'll work our way down, Rebecca, Judge Conaway, and we'll end up with Kai, and then I'm going to ask you to engage that topic for me.
Okay.
So you go ahead and introduce yourself, Judge Connolly, and then we'll work our way down.
Okay, I am Rebecca Connolly, and I hope that you can hear me.
She's our quiet one, so tell her. Put the mic on.
It is okay to be a quiet woman. I am a graduate of Washington and Lee Law School. I graduated in 1988. I live here in Lexington. I'm a bankruptcy lawyer. I have worked in large firms, small firms, and on my own, and I also took about 3 years off when my children were quite young. So I've been also a stay-at-home mom. Right now, I have 2 teenagers. They're in high school here at Rockbridge County High School, and my work as a bankruptcy lawyer requires that I'm in Harrisonburg, Charlottesville, Lynchburg, and Roanoke. So I'm in the federal courts every week. I love what I do, and I love being here, and I'm grateful that we have this opportunity to have this important conversation.
Hello, I'm Abigail Murchison. I grew up here in Lexington. You might have Professor Murchison. I'm his daughter. So
how cool is that?
It's fascinating to me to be in this law school right now. I didn't go to law school here. I went to William & Mary for law school. But I remember coming here, growing up, and pretending like it was my house, and pretending it was like a big mansion, sort of the Sound of Music mansion, and it was my house. So it's fun to be back here and to talk to all of you. I am a third-year associate at Gentry Lock, Rakes & Moore, which is a law firm in Roanoke, Virginia. So that's not too far away from here. I graduated from William & Mary in 2010, graduated from Princeton in 2005, and between college and law school, I was a paralegal at the Justice Department in a consumer litigation office. So I've been a paralegal and also taught English in Thailand, so I've gotten to travel a little bit too, and so now I'm an associate, and that's sort of the perspective I hope to bring is the young associate that's trying to achieve a bit of work-life balance, but I'm not married, I don't have kids right now, but there's still a lot to juggle, and so I can only imagine folks that are married, have kids. I don't know how you all juggle it, because I sometimes find myself struggling just with my small plate of tasks. So this will be a fun conversation, but I look forward to hearing from all of you.
My name is Elizabeth Gunn. I'm the Yankee of the group. I grew up in Oregon. I went to law school at Boston College, and then I moved to Richmond. Well, actually moved to Charlottesville and commuted from Charlottesville to Richmond for 2 years while I was an associate at McGuire Woods. And then in 2007, I joined a law firm which is no more. It's called Direct Bradshaw, which morphed into Direct Crump, which 2.5 years ago, my practice group left and went to Sands Anderson PC. We have 5 offices in 4 in Virginia, 1 in North Carolina, and we're what you would call a medium-sized firm. We're about 70 attorneys, I think, right now. I am what Abby was just talking about. On the personal side, I've been married almost 10 years. I have 2 kids who are 4 and 1.5. I have no idea what the work-life balance is, but I'm really trying to find it. I'm a bankruptcy practitioner, and I have yet to be in front of Judge Connolly, so I'm still very nice to her. But I look forward to it. And I'm also the immediate past chair of the International Women's Insolvency and Restructuring Confederation, called IWORK, the Virginia Network. It's a international group with networks throughout the world, including in Hong Kong, Cayman Islands. I'm still working on how to visit their network, haven't figured that one out. Of over 2,000 insolvency professionals, not just lawyers. So we work with financial advisors, bank lawyers, in-house counsel, anybody who works in the insolvency field. And so we're the Virginia Network, so we have Virginia lawyers, and we're one of the co-sponsors for today, but it's an interesting organization in that it's a referral type organization, but we also get the opportunity to really interact with different types of professionals, which I found is an important part as you go through the law, because it's not just all about dealing with the lawyers. So IWORK is a great avenue for doing that. And I'm excited to be here today. I'm a 2005 grad, so if I do the math, I'm in my 9th year. I'm technically counsel, which is the Sands Anderson way of saying you're too old to be an associate. But I'm counsel at Sands Anderson, not a shareholder. I don't have any ownership in the firm, but I do have responsibilities beyond that of what an associate would have.
And Kai.
I'm Kai Memmer. Kai Lonnie is my name. I grew up in Hawaii. Went to Wellesley College because I wanted something different, and it was really cold. And so then I came to Virginia for law school. I went to the University of Richmond, and I thought the whole state was pretty darn cool. And I interviewed down in Roanoke, and the mountains were beautiful, and the people were nice, and so I stayed thinking I'd go to Hawaii, eventually. Well, 22 years later, I'm still here. I was a partner at the law firm of Gentry Locke, where Abby is now, and left that firm to go practice with some of my friends. So now there are 8 of us. I'm one of the 3 principals in that law firm. I'm past president of the Virginia Women Attorneys Association, which is a statewide organization, and past president of the Roanoke chapter. And I'm very, very involved in state bar activities and bar activities across the state. And I have a 10-year-old. I'm a single parent. I've got a 5th grader who's crazy fun and is the light of my life. I volunteer at a domestic violence shelter. I volunteer at my church. I volunteer every place they ask me to, because I don't yet know how to say no. But I get tremendous pleasure from all of that, and I coach my daughter's teams. And so the whole point, I think, of ending with me is that, yes, you can absolutely have it all. There's no question that you can have it all. You can have everything it is that you want, and I'm a firm believer. I started in a big firm, and I was handed a sheet that said, this is the partnership criteria. Because I asked when I was a summer associate, I'm like, what's the partnership criteria? I don't have any, if I want to go, I want to know what am I obligated to do? What am I supposed to do? How are you gauging my performance? What kinds of things do I need to do? And there was the sheet, and I thought, okay, well, I'll do that. I'm going to do it better than everybody else, and I'll do that. I'm going to do it better than everybody else. And so, I had this game plan. They basically handed it to me, the playbook, but I had the game plan, and I thought, well, I'm going to do it, and I'm going to do it better than everybody else. And the other stuff, I think, fell a little bit to the side in terms of focusing on that. And then I realized I could do all that, but I could also do all the other stuff that I wanted to do. I could volunteer, I could play sports like I did in college. I could have a full life and have the relationships that I wanted to have, and I knew I always wanted to have a child, and I waited until I actually left Gentry Locke. I mean, my daughter, I'm 46, I had her when I was 36. Sometimes I feel really old, and I wish I had her younger. But you can have it all. Don't let anybody tell you, even Elizabeth, that you can't have it all, okay? Don't let them tell you that. You have to decide what all is for you. What is all for you? What is important to you? And how do you work it? I mean, my daughter, I watched, when I'm in my office, which is maybe 2 days a week, I watch the school bus turn in front of my office, and I hang out the window and hooey at my daughter when she gets off the bus. She goes to after school 2 doors down from me. That's what a small firm gives me. I can watch her play in the back. I watch her play basketball in the afternoon. I embarrass her every day when I'm there and she gets off the bus. She doesn't think it's cool, but all her friends think I'm awesome. Okay? Because no other mom is hanging out of the window of a law firm going, "Hooey!" Hey! So, but I love that. I love it, and that is the single most important thing to me, is to be available and be there for her. There are times like tonight I'm going to get home late, and it takes a village. You seek your village. You have those people who support you, who are friends, the relatives that you have, your significant others, whoever it may be, and you find a way to do all those things that you want to do. When I volunteer, I take time away from her. I take time away from my law practice. You know what? I'm really productive between 11 p.m. and 1 a.m. Okay? And there are nights when I need to do that. You all pull all-nighters all the time. Adults do too sometimes. But you do what you have to do. But if you're fulfilled and you're happy and you're enjoying those other things and all of the other things are satisfying you, then the work stuff's easy. The work stuff's easy. You have to decide what you love and what your all is, and have a game plan to make it work. And don't let anybody tell you you can't do it.
Let me ask you, Kai, and Elizabeth too, since you're sitting next to each other, I think we should have split you up. And I also ask this from the standpoint of myself, who am a refugee from Big Law. Did you need to leave Big Law to do that? Is the difference between the two of you that you're in larger firms, do you think? I'm just curious about your sense.
I think there was an expectation, and it was a stated expectation at Big Law when I started there, that you would have at least 10 hours of FaceTime a day. It didn't, and you should bill most of those. And more than 10 hours was encouraged and expected. And by the way, at least one day over the weekend was expected as well. And I don't say that to scare you off from Big Law. There are a lot of really good learning opportunities from being there. But I got in that 16 months, and I knew I couldn't be there forever. I did not want to live to work. I wanted to work to live. And as Kai says, you can find your all, but your all changes. And I think I'm still trying to figure out what my all is, which is why I say I can't find the balance, because I'm not sure what my all is yet. I've got 2 little ones, and their activities are starting to ramp up, and I've got more internal things at a medium-sized firm that I've got to figure out. So it's hard, and I think I'm in that stage, and I'm to find my all. And I think I will get there. There's going to be a day where I can look back and say, I'm so glad that I stayed with it and that I worked hard and I put in my hours, but I also found the way to be there for my kids' activities. I can't yell out of my 23rd story window at my daughter, but I'll tell you, I will embarrass her every other way from here to Sunday that I can think of, including at her dance recital, because I will take that morning off to be there for her dance recital. And so, yeah, I was never going to be a Big Law grinder. And there is a woman in Richmond, and she has been at Big Law her entire career, and she has 2 kids, and she leaves at 5, and she hangs out with her kids until they go to bed at 8, and she works till 1. My brain turns off at 11. My brain turned off at 11 in college. My brain turned off at 11 in law school. I couldn't pull the 11 to 1 shift. So that's not something I can do. I got to be in the office a little bit later, but then I'm home for the kids for dinner and bath and bedtime, and you just have to find your all. And I'm still struggling with that, but I hope as they become more little people instead of little blobs that need diapers and bottles and babies. If they become people, I hope that'll be an easier balance to find.
I don't think you need to leave Big Law. For me, it made it easier. Those expectations are there, and I'm much more flexible. I mean, today when I left, I said, "Hey, I'm going to W&L. I'll see you later." I mean, I don't feel like somebody's searching for me. I do the things that I want to do when I want to do them. My hours get in. I like my partners. They have the same commitment to values. Everybody in our firm does. Our associates do. They leave when they need to leave. They take care of what they need to take care of. They're professionals, and we expect that they'll get the stuff done. And you know what? They do. They all get it done. So that, I don't know whether you need to. I feel differently in a smaller law firm with partners who I know and trust and adore and respect. And I think that makes a difference because they get who I am and they get what's important to me, and I get what's important to them. I don't ask them where they are. Every now and then in a big firm, my secretary would email me, "Hey, so-and-so's looking for you,"
No.
What does he put, and no one looks for me now. I mean, people know where I am, or they ask my secretary and they're like, "Oh, she's at a soccer game," or whatever it may be. So I feel differently. I don't know if I couldn't do I certainly can't yell out the window, even out at the 8th floor where I was. But, I probably would feel differently about coming and going the way that I do now. And that is a freedom that is very, very important to me. And if it's something that's important to you, then I think you need to ask those things and find out. Is it flexible? Is it getting your 18 or 19 or whatever hundreds of hours? I mean, is that the important thing? Does it matter when that gets done? In general, I think people want you to be there because when you're there, you get assignments as a young lawyer, you're there for opportunities. So those things are important. There's just a point at which the balance gets better. I promise.
I know.
It gets better and it comes.
Well, let me ask Abby. So you're sort of, or did you want to say something, Rebecca, before I jump to her? Go ahead.
Okay, that,
Judge Con, I'm sorry. We have a relationship outside of the bench, and I need to.
go ahead. No,
No,
tell me,
go
Rebecca.
ahead.
I was just going to pick up on a couple of things that Kai mentioned as a way of another way of thinking about this. When Kai mentioned that she left the big firm to work with some friends, and you do the kind of work you like to do. Really, I think that's probably the bigger difference rather than the size of the law firm. It's do you like what you do and do you like who you work with? Because I do know some women who work in big firms, but they're doing what they like to do and they're doing it with people they like to work with. And they have young kids, and yes, they have the same pressures, but when you're doing what you like to do, you find the time to do it. In fact, it doesn't feel like work. You're doing what you like to do. And so whether it's at night or whether you're juggling something else, you're just enjoying what you do and you like what you do and you get it done. For not everyone does it work out that way. I too ended up scaling back, and for me, when I stopped practicing when my kids were little, that had more to do with a feeling that I had in my heart. And I think, Hannah, you might appreciate this. When you have needy clients, if you do consumer work, they sometimes will turn to you for everything and anything under the sun. And when I had an infant and a toddler, I just didn't have the patience for those consumers, and I needed the break. So it worked out for me to take the break so that I could just focus on being a mom, because I just simply couldn't divide up my energies at that time.
Well, that raises a really interesting question I want to ask you, but before I move on, because to me that's a very gendered reaction in a good way, right, about how we approach the practice of law. Does anything come up for you guys yet that you want to bounce off these learning before I start calling on you? I'm going to move on. I'm just giving you a chance. The time will come and I'll make you talk. Yeah, you talk about the work. I used to be a corporate litigator and do management side labor employment, so we didn't actually deal with human beings that weren't in general counsel's office or executives. And now I do poverty work, right, in the clinic, and it's very demanding emotionally. And I wonder about whether there's something about being a woman and how you relate to the work that you do that maybe differentiates you and sort of exhausts your resources, that requires perhaps that scaling back if at least if you're the type of woman that is sort of, it lives as an empath, say, connects in that way or not. I don't know. I just wanted to put the question to you because something struck me in what you said.
In my experience, probably yes. I tended to have a relationship with all of my clients that I just naturally fell into because I guess of my interest in helping them, and it was, you're right, taxing emotionally. Now it was great. It was what I loved doing, and I still love doing it. And it's probably the thing I miss the most about not practicing law. It's the first thing I missed when I actually went from practicing law to having kids, and then I became a standing bankruptcy trustee. And as a bankruptcy trustee, I would review cases initially by just getting their information. So you're looking at paper, or you're looking at numbers on paper. And I had a really hard time with that when I first started. I had no idea how dissatisfying that would be for me, that I went from representing people, and we would sit across a table, and often there were tears. And that was something that I did, is help these people who were crying, and I could help them through the system, and they think I've performed a miracle when I just helped them maneuver something that they couldn't handle. Now I'm looking at numbers, and these aren't people anymore. They don't even have names. My cases are assigned to me by number, and I just found it just unsatisfying was really the best way I could put it. And it took me a long time to finally feel a sense of job satisfaction by realizing that what I was doing was helping a system that I happen to think is very important for our culture and our community. And I'm grateful to be part of the system and making it, I think, hopefully, work a little bit better. And so that's my satisfaction, even though I can't get the direct satisfaction from working face-to-face with people. But anyway, that was my
What
experience.
about you, Abby? Is that resonating with you at all?
Well, so I am in the commercial litigation practice group at Gentry Lock, and it's a medium-sized firm. And like I said, I don't have kids quite yet, but I think but I see this on my horizon. I've got a boyfriend who lives here in Lexington, actually, and so we're sort of talking about what our future will entail. And I know that
What happens in this room doesn't make it back to Professor Murchison.
yeah, we are in a cone of silence here. He doesn't need to know much more than that. But what's interesting is that since these things are on my horizon, I would say pretty short time horizon. Right now, I'm kind of doing everything I can to be the best associate possible and to take advantage of all the opportunities that are there for somebody that doesn't necessarily have to rush home right as daycare is closing, as I see some of my coworkers having to do, and trying to be available, because I know in 5 years or so that is going to be me, and I'm going to have to prioritize things differently. So I'm trying to take advantage of my relative freedom right now. And I know it sounds like a luxury to the rest of you because you're so busy, but my advice to you all as you're just sort of leaping into the profession is, to the extent possible, take advantage of the fact that you are you're able to dedicate a lot of your energy to the job, because you want to show the firm that you're hungry and that you're willing to take on all the challenges. That way, in a few years, when you're needing to strike a different balance, you sort of purchased some credibility from them, and they're going to be more willing to work with your schedule or come up with some sort of flexible policy, because you've already shown them that you're dedicated to the firm. Now, everybody doesn't stay at the same job for even the first 5 years of practice, but if you do, you've kind of gotten yourself a little bit of credibility that way. So take advantage of that time if you have it.
I think another thing that isn't, there's not enough emphasis put on it for young lawyers, is take the hour or two away from your billable time and go to that bar luncheon, go to that young lawyers division luncheon, go to that law school alumni reception, meet the people who are not only the people who are the partners and senior to you, but meet the people who are your contemporaries in your field, in your area, in the room. And this is one of the best pieces of advice ever given to me, was go out and meet those people, because those are the people who are going to be your referral sources in 10 years. It's not the guy who's a senior partner now. Yes, you'd love to get work from him now. You'd love to do some work for him now. Be there, be available, be at the door when he comes with that work, he or she comes. But also go out and meet those people who you might not have met in law school, but who came into town from a different law school, who are a couple of years your senior or whatever. Meet those people who are going to be your network as you're up and growing, and invest your time in creating that network early when you have the time to do and a little flexibility to go to some of those events. One of the senior partners, when I first started at the big law firm, said, lawyers don't eat from a bucket. And you got student loans, and you got an apartment, and you got moving costs, and you're like, I'm bringing my lunch because it is cheaper. But if you think to yourself, one day a week, one day every other week, I'm going to go out and have lunch. Or I'm going to go out and pick up lunch just so I can see who's out and about also picking up lunch, and have a 5-minute conversation with them. And, I don't agree with him, lawyers don't always eat from buckets, but there is some logic to making sure you're not just in your office at all times. It's important to be there, but it's also important to lay your foundation in those early years, because that's the people who you're going to be able to call up and say, hey, Abby, I have this commercial law thing, and they're talking about this code section that I don't know, or this rule, and you get free advice, and it's great, even if they're not in your own firm. I have a woman in Richmond who I'm like, hey, there's this domestic law thing. They're talking about some order. Talk me through this. And then she'll call me and say, there's a bankruptcy and I don't know what they're talking about. So having those connections helps you along in the future. It's worth the 3 or 4 hours a month to get out there and just meet people as you go along.
Well, and how important to all of you, I guess I have this question, it's how important in terms of your own development has it been for you to nurture those networks of other lawyers and other female lawyers in particular, and what strategies have you used to develop that resource for yourselves?
Well, let me just start with one thing, because I can add just a small bit here, because I neglected to mention that I did clerk for a state court judge right after law school, and she is a judge in Prince William County, which is a little county on the outer orbital of the DC area, and she's this, rising star in the state court judiciary, and she's somebody that I definitely continue to email and call on a regular basis, and so I see her as a mentor. But mentoring is a two-way street. I feel like if I didn't remember to email her, she might forget about me, and maybe that's not true, but I think you do need to make sure that you let yourself be mentored and maintain those connections and foster them. And she definitely was important to me because she was a woman, and she waited a little bit longer to have her children, and she was doing it, and it was just amazing. So that's all I'll add there.
I was blessed to be in a firm where there weren't many women, but there were a few women who were 4 or 5 years older than me, and whenever I had a question, I would go in and close the door and I would ask them, and they would help me through everything. Judge Apgar sitting in the back, Diane Strickland, yep, that's you. Diane Strickland, was one of his law partners on the bench, and she has since retired and now is a mediator with McCammon, and Judge Apgar is also providing mediation and arbitration services should you need it after this presentation. But you're welcome. But Diane, I remember as a young lawyer, I needed something, and someone in my firm said, why don't you call Diane Strickland and ask her? And I thought, I can't call the judge and ask her. She doesn't know me very well. Well, I called her and she said, let's have lunch. Are you free in an hour? And I said, sure. And it's been a tremendous friendship ever since. But Abby's exactly right. I was afraid to ask. None of you should be afraid to ask. You can call me tomorrow. I'll have lunch with you tomorrow. Any of you. There's not a person on this panel who you can't email tomorrow or call for lunch or call for help or help getting a job, whatever it may be. Call us. That's why we're sitting here. And we know there are 50 more like us. There are 50 behind me. Diane Strickland's one of them. There are 50 behind Elizabeth. There are 50 behind Abby. And there are 50 behind Judge Connolly. You got 200 women and men sitting behind us who are there to help you if you will simply ask and seek to be mentored. And I lucked in to some incredible women, judges across the state. When I became involved in the Virginia Women Attorneys Association, I didn't do it to further my career or for all these other things. I just thought, well, neat, it'd be really cool to hang out with a bunch of women lawyers. Well, I have practice all over the state. I have friends in Tidewater who help me. I have judges in all parts of the state who help me. And it's not a name dropping or anything. It's just this fortuitous blessing and luck that I had, that I got to be in the right place at the right time. And I got to volunteer doing really cool things with some really amazing people and having conversations, not adversaries, but true conversations about who we are and what's important to us. And you end up developing true friendships and relationships. And these people are not just the people who refer me cases, okay? They aren't just the people who answer my questions. The people that I went to lunch with 9 years, I'm not practicing with, okay? They're my friends that I'm not practicing with, and they're the people that pick up my kid, okay? They're my village. So all of those things are so important, but Abby is right, and I fell into it just by the grace and luck. But ask. You have an obligation in 3 years, or 5 years, or 9 years, or 22 years to do the same thing, to reach back, whether it's to a 1L who's going up, this is not what I thought, and I'm really miserable, it's the worst year of my life, right? Help them out. It was the worst year of all of our lives, right? But help them out. Lift them up. There are some women, my mom was one of the first Episcopal women priests in the country. And at the first church we went to, who do you think left? Who left the church? Who got pissed off that there was a woman preaching? Women. Women. And I never got it. And there are women lawyers when I was coming up who were like that. They're just some. I just remember them though because they're so stark. Throw down 5 ladders for every 1 ladder that was thrown to you. 5 more. We have an obligation to do that, and there's absolute joy in doing it. Okay? I love meeting Betsy today. She and I, we're going to work this out. We're going to find a way to get her a job. I don't know where it's going to be, but we're going to figure it out. Okay? Betsy and I are going to figure it out. We're going to have cookies, and we're going to figure it out. That's fun to be able to help people, and we all have the opportunity, and we all know people who know people who know people. And I don't want to skip to topic number 7, but.
No, I was kind of going to go there, Todd.
But this is all part of it.
Okay.
I mean, we did kind of walk into we called it the Good Old Boy Network and all that, but look at these great guys that are here. These guys are part of it. They're part of supporting us. They're part of helping us. They get it. They love us. Okay? And they're here. But there is a network of men and women who will do everything in the world to support you, but you have to ask. And there is kind of an old girls network too. You know?
We are getting older, it's true.
I feel really young. I feel a lot younger than my gray hair would say. Yeah.
I kind of have a question to go to that. 'Cause
Sure.
I can really talk for all the 4 of the guys here. We have a lot of female friends that are here. Patrick's lucky enough to marry one here, and I think the rest of us will eventually go and date into the legal area and whatnot. But how do we help out either our girlfriends or our sister or our colleagues who are going through experiences that we just can't relate to because we're not females?
Talk to him. I had to have a come to Jesus, excuse me if you're religious, come to Jesus meeting with my husband this past year because I was like, I can't do it all. I can't do the groceries and the dinner and the breakfast and my billable hours. I just can't do it all. And he said, what can I do? I mean, that's the best question you can ask. What can I do? Because we don't, I mean, sometimes we just, she says, don't hesitate to ask. Don't hesitate to ask your tribe. I mean, you're gonna have a tribe when you get settled, you're gonna have that, it takes a village to raise a child, it takes a village to just be an adult. I mean, you have to have your village. And you gotta let them know, look, I need to work late for the next 2 weeks because I have a big trial coming up. And if I don't, then my life's going to fall apart. And you know what? I will take over the dinners for a week afterwards. But for the next 2 weeks, just don't complain. Just say, what do you need to do? And make sure there's soap in the shower and we're good to go. So, I mean, I think that's the big question for me was I was afraid to ask because as the mom and as the woman, I put it all on my shoulders. I got to be the mom and professional. And finally, I had to call Marcy and say, this is what I need you to do for me. And he said, that was the question, and that's all I needed to hear was, what can I do? What do you need me to do? And it's just, it seems like a really stupid, basic answer, but that was the thing I needed to hear at that moment.
Did she answer your question?
Yeah, that works. I can do that.
Brian, I know you can do this. I'm so sure.
I guess I should follow with it and then do it without complaining.
Well, but there are you all have to hit 2 different topics, but there's a thread in common, and it has to do with asking, right? It has to do with leading for yourself instead of following. And I think that issue for women sort of cuts across probably almost all of the things that we want to talk about today. And I guess I'd like to know, because and I'm asking this because of my own evolution. I wasn't always this assertive. It took getting yelled at by mean men in the profession when I was young. So did you undertake any evolution? Did you have any sort of experience with wrestling with the part of you that wouldn't ask for help, that wouldn't go out and find mentors, that wouldn't ask the firm to change the way that it was handling you because of fear or because of a sense that it somehow wasn't okay? And if you had been there, how did you get away from that? Does that question resonate for you at all?
Well, I guess we all can probably speak to it. Well, I think I can answer it in a couple different ways. See, in my experience, I may not necessarily be, when I was a child and when I was a young lawyer, I wasn't necessarily overly assertive, but I did ask. And so I found that in my case, because I tended to believe that I didn't know and somebody else had to know, I tended to be more inclined to ask.
Because it was okay for you not to know.
Because in my own head, I didn't believe that I already had an answer. And so therefore, I would consult anyone who I could consult. But what I would say is with my transformation, if you would, to finally get myself more comfortable in my own skin, has really just been pursuing your education and enhancing it and mastering it. Because I think what's made the difference, at least for me, has been two things. Your education is both knowledge, information, but it's also skill. You need to know how to reason, how to discern, how to evaluate, how to conclude. And so you learn that through your education too. You learn how to think. And by focusing on my education and trying to learn as much as I could about the law and how to apply the law, then that allowed me to be successful. And each step along the way, I might see, an accomplishment or a success, and that made me more and more comfortable in my own skin. I think with respect to sort of speaking out, I guess by loving the law and wanting to pursue the law, and by looking at colleagues, whatever age or gender, as information. I mean, to me, it was just somebody else who can answer a question. I guess, like Elizabeth, I was inclined to call someone up and say, I have this question about an area of the law. What do can you help me? I looked upon that as this opportunity, and since I like learning, then that would just allow me to spend more time learning that new topic, and then that conversation would just grow and grow and grow, and then next thing I knew, people were consulting me. So I guess I would just go with what works for you, and don't be afraid to reach out, to speak up. And I do think that probably I agree with Elizabeth that yes, seeking networking with others is very critical, but I also think equally critical is just pursuing your education and trying to learn as much as you can and to obtain both knowledge as well as skills, and don't take that for granted. You need to work on that throughout your career, and if you do, I think you'll be successful whatever you do.
Abby, it seemed to me that you wanted to add to that, am I right?
Yes, I will just add, you asked about kind of personal evolution, and just one thing I've observed about myself in the last year or so is I think when you become an associate at a firm or a young lawyer at any employment area, one thing you're taught is that your supervisors in a way are your clients, and you're to really respond to them a lot and sort of nurture them or tend to their needs as if they're a client from the public that you'd be working with. So you're kind of taught like that's your client, your supervisor, your supervising partner is your client. But you got to remember, actually, the most important client is yourself in a way. And maybe that seems selfish, but I think it's something that you need to dedicate time to your personal and professional development and remember that you are important. And so the exact change I've noticed in myself is that I used to think anytime I was at work, doing work, thinking about work, I was doing the right thing. And every time I was sort of planning my weekend or figuring out how I was going to see my friends or my boyfriend, that was sort of the wrong thing. And I wasn't like allocating my time properly. I needed to be focused on work. Now I realize, you do need to be purposeful about sort of developing your relationships and maintaining relationships professionally and just personally. And that's okay. And that's not like a renegade rogue thought you're having from work. It's just gonna make your work life better if you cultivate and develop that personal life. And it's okay to spend time and energy on that, and you're going to be better off.
I think for me, I came in out of law school very, very perfectionist. And I wanted to have everything perfect, and I wanted to always have the right answer, and I wanted to do it the fastest and the quickest and the best. And that's really important, but also you're in I've learned that it's a practice of law, and it's called a practice for a reason. And you are going to find on the back end that the judge knew more than you did because you forgot to think about one way. And it's not a time to beat yourself up about, I wasn't the most perfect person I'd ever done. And I have gone home feeling guilty that I wasn't a good lawyer that day. Today I was not a good lawyer. And you've got to remember, it's a practice of law. And as you come around to learn, I think this goes along with Judge Connolly, learn from everything you do, and learn from your, I'm not gonna say mistakes, your trips, because eventually you'll come back and something you did 2 years ago is gonna make sense. And so some days you just have to be good enough. I have filed good enough motions. They are not perfect. They do not have all the legal citation, and I don't think my blue book looked much like it looks today, but it was good enough because I had an hour and a half to file it because it was due that afternoon, and I had to be in front of the judge the next day, and I just had to get it good enough. And it was really hard to come back from that law review, read it backwards, check the citations, double check the blue book, and make sure I had all of the L's italicized and the periods right, and no superscript mentality to, I'm doing something for a client, and I've got, ultimately, this client needs me to have this happen, and whether or not I had the 14th blue book citation correct or not, they don't care about as long as I get to this point. And so getting over myself was a really big development, and still is, still finding the way to feel satisfied that I'm doing really good, effective work for my clients, but doing it, but knowing what needs to be done to get done to the results. Remember that sometimes it's not all about how perfect your brief is, as long as your client comes out victorious in the end.
I'm stuck on this nice man saying, what can I do?
Yeah.
Being here is, I think, the first thing. But I think one thing that I've noticed throughout my years of practice, in general, I think women are not particularly good at talking themselves up. We're not very good at it. I've seen a lot of men who are really fantastic at it. They can tell you how great they are, and some. But in general, I think women, and the women that I practice with, struggle with it. I mean, one of my partners has put her name in to be one of the first female district court judges, and anyone who knows her knows she's ridiculously brilliant. She is so experienced in a class act and perfect temperament and just everything. I think she would be a fan, and there's a great class of candidates for this judgeship. But she struggled with even putting her name in because she said it just feels pretentious to even submit my name. And I thought, really? Right. You've been doing these panels and interviewing people and trying cases for years and years and years, but you somehow feel it's pretentious? But that's, and she can't, we'll go market and we'll do it together because she talks about how great I am and I talk about how great she is because she can't talk about how great she is. So little just bit for you. Talk all these women up, okay? Talk your woman partner up. Talk your significant other up. Talk your professors up. Talk up Judge Connolly. Talk up all the women that you care about because they're going to struggle. And not only does it make you a really cool guy, but they're not so good at it. I've often struggled with that. I mean, women, and I think as a young lawyer, I just did all the things on the checklist. I didn't go, hey, here it is, annual review, check, 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 check. I did it all. I billed more hours than he did, tried more cases than they did. It was just, I just thought it would all be noticed. And sometimes it's not. And the people who sometimes are doing less are running around bragging about it. And that's just that's the reality.
In fact, often.
Most of the time.
Well, and that's the reality of kind of being a young associate. And I just thought, surely they get it, right? I mean, they look at the numbers, they know what I'm doing, they know I'm trying cases and I'm developing clients. But it's really cool to see men that I work with do that. Because and like I have one male partner who's just fantastic, and we'll go out and try cases together, do stuff, and he's just like me. And I say generalization, he can't talk himself up. He's like, oh, I don't think I'm good enough. I'm like, you're fantastic. You're one of the best trial lawyers I know. So just do that. Lift up people around you, whoever they are, man, woman, doesn't matter.
Yeah, I'm so excited.
Lift them up.
Yeah, I'm so grateful that you brought this up and that you mentioned it. Listening to Kai makes me think about some other comments that I thought about when you raised that question, and I now have the chance to follow up on. Yes, you do need to raise up when you see a woman have an accomplishment. Say so, but also celebrate it. So, and that's the same thing. It's talking about it and it's celebrating it. And you know, it's actually kind of hard for men to do that sometimes. And of course, we're talking in generalizations here. There's always exceptions. But I found in my experience that my husband had to recognize my accomplishments. And you know, we joke a lot. Alex Eichenbaum knows my husband can be the butt of a lot of jokes. And he will often talk about these differences between men and women that he says, I don't know what it is about you women. I think I look great. Why is it that you have to spend all this time worrying about the way you look? You should just be like me. I look great all the time. And so we tease each other about that. The guys will think they look great when they look like you're balding and they're old and the pouch of the stomach, etc. They think they look hot, and yet here we are and we're struggling with how we look, and it's and that can spill into also your professional life. So we can joke about it, but sometimes for men, when they recognize that their partner or significant other or their sister or their neighbor or their friend or their whoever it is, law partner, outshined them, it can be hard when they're talking with other men. I think sometimes men don't quite know what to say or what to do. And so we need to support men too, who are supportive of us, and that it's okay sometimes for the woman to outshine the man. It's very hard for a man to take a back seat to a woman in your career. And not very many men will do that. And I strongly encourage you to encourage men who do that and celebrate that as well. It's I think men are harder on men who step aside for their spouses' careers than we are on men who do so. So we can be nurturing of men who choose to do that. So I encourage you again to celebrate because these are also your friends, and they may be they're your law classmates. They will ultimately be your colleagues. They may be sources of referrals. And they may be people who can help you out in the end. So it's helpful for you to help encourage them. And I just encourage all of you to be supportive of men who are supportive of their spouses and significant others, even if it means that they might have to sacrifice some of their advancement in order to support their spouse. It's funny, we can say, oh, I had to move because of my husband's job. It's a lot harder for a man to say, I moved for my wife's job. And how about taking time off? My husband did do that. He had unpaid leave. Now again, he looked upon this as the best thing in the world. But I tell you, my stepfather never accepted it. And of course, the way my husband looked at that was that's his problem, which of course it is. But it's not easy for guys. If you're not quite as self-confident as my husband, you probably would have a harder time with that.
So, Rebecca, Judge Conley, you gave me a segue that I'm going to take, even though it wasn't your intention, because I have a husband who always thinks he looks great too. Because you've met him. And it made me think about, all right, so what is it about that thing that it is about confidence and exterior indications about that, which makes me think about dress? And it may be this piece that has to do with confidence, self-confidence, and the inability to project, to look at oneself from the outside and assess, that makes the question of dress so difficult for women. I mean, there is all the exterior stuff that's happening, but then there's what we're doing in our own heads. That's about how do we find, how do we put ourselves together so that we're being the woman that we want to be projecting out in the world. And I want to talk about dress, even though it's sort of a basic and somehow could be seen to be trivializing our discussion. I think it's important, and actually some students in my class are like, yes, you have to talk about this. So I want to talk about that. I want to talk about the struggle to not be frumpy, and not to be sexy. I mean, what are we doing as women, and how do we exist in the world? How do we deploy self in this way? What choices do we make, and how do we go about navigating that? So pick. One of y'all talk about it.
My taste is all in my mouth. I have no fashion sense. And so when I started, I went out and I bought the suits, and I bought the little like cowl neck tops, and I bought the little heels, and I think I even bought hose. And I wore that for like a year, and I was miserable. I was uncomfortable. I was self-conscious. I was always like, there's a pooch here. I mean, I was not comfortable in myself. And at some point, I think it was after I switched firms and I was in a different, more friendly environment with people I enjoyed working with and who I had a good relationship with. And you know what? I went. There's nothing wrong with pants. There's nothing wrong with just a blouse. And you know, if you need a jacket. And I was telling the gals before we started it, I wear dance clothes 98% of the time. In fact, my sister-in-law laughed because I gave up heels for Lent, which just means I'm not going to wear them for Lent and have an excuse. And nobody's ever said anything to me about it. As long as, and our office is business casual, so slacks and a shirt is just fine. But there are other women in the office that wear skirts and tops, and that's what they feel comfortable wearing. There is that woman in court who we always like to see what she's going to come in, because there's always something interesting about her outfit. Don't be that person. But
but what do you mean?
She's always got a little extra cut on the shirt.
She's talking about cleavage.
Yeah. Yeah, I think. Yes. Yeah. Or or it's a little extra tight, maybe a size 6 instead of the size 8 she should be wearing, or the shoes that, there was a woman who one day came to work in like 6-inch stilettos that have a 2-inch tower. This was in court, and they were like blazing blue. We all kind of looked at each other like, really? You came to... I mean, so there is some, don't go on the outskirts, but if you can find your own comfortable place, as long as that's within what the core, what your office requires, I guess for me, is don't try to be somebody you're not in what you're going to wear to work.
But what about the woman who feels sexy and wants to project sexy?
There are ways to do it appropriately. I mean, that you can wear the fitted shirt, but have it be a fitted shirt with a higher collar. I mean, find the balance. Juliana Margulies on that show that I never watched apparently has a very nice wardrobe, and that she's always wearing very fitted suits and tops, but she never looks like she's asking for something that she's not. I did find this morning, I was doing some research on an unrelated topic in the Southern District of Georgia, and I came across an order entered by all of the judges of the Southern District of Georgia of the dress code. And I encourage you, it's the Southern District of Georgia Bankruptcy Court. And I encourage you to go read this, because it is the most strict dress code I've ever read of anything in my life. In fact, it goes so far, and as Judge Connolly and Hannah can approve, it goes so far to say anybody who's a party in the bankruptcy court cannot show up in denim. They cannot show up no one can wear sneakers. I mean, it's the most strict dress code I've ever heard of. And I looked, and all 5 of the judges that signed it were men. And I don't know their age, I don't know much about them because I don't practice in that court, but I happened to be there, and it was interesting because in the bankruptcy court, you're dealing with people who don't generally have any money. And they come to court in what they have. And some of them come in their best clothes, and God bless them if those are their best clothes, but the no denim rule, I think, would sink a third of the people that come into the courthouse every day to bankruptcy court. And so I just can't imagine having to be a debtor's lawyer down there and say, you can come to court, but you need to go on your limited budget while you're filing bankruptcy and buy a pair of khakis. And they actually require their jurors down there to come in coat and tie. So, it's interesting. I just thought that was, it kicked in my head because I knew you were going to ask about that today, that court was it's the most stringent rule I've ever seen. And it's a court order that you have to come that, or the marshals are instructed to turn you away. So I guess there's some, look at that as the strictest. If you're meeting their dress code, you got it made. But For me, it was I had to find my personal style. I have all those suits I bought, when I first started, and they're in a closet somewhere because they were pre-baby, and maybe someday I'll get back into them, and maybe they'll be something I want to wear again. But it was not comfortable for me, and I'm a much better lawyer when I'm in my office thinking about my work than I'm thinking about is my my pants are too tight type of thing. So that's my perspective.
I think the dress code used to be the middle 10%. I mean, when I first started, we actually had a written dress code. The women had a dress code, but the men did not. The men did not have to wear socks or underwear. We actually had to wear pantyhose. We were required to wear pantyhose. We were required to wear a skirt with a suit or a dress. You could not wear pants to work. I've only been practicing 22 years, folks, okay? It's not that long. I don't look, as old as my gray hair would tell you, but I thought, well, how come the guys don't have a dress code? They don't even have to wear boxers. I got to wear pantyhose? It seems ridiculous. So I think there was this dress code, and Judge Apgar will tell you that there was an expectation in court that was, here. These were the varieties. And if you wore a pink blazer, you were over the edge, okay? Now, not so much. I think we've gone to maybe 60% is acceptable, and we're going to put 20 over here, not a good idea. 20 over here, probably not a good idea for different reasons, right? They're not a good idea. But within that 60%, I think you can be incredibly comfortable and be you. Be authentic and be you. Jurors see it and they feel it. Judges see it and they feel it. Be you. Be authentic you, whoever that is within the 60%. Now, Judge Apgar, the reason the 5 judges signed that order, and I'll tell you, Judge Apgar will tell you, he's never going to tell a woman, oh my gosh, excuse me, Miss So-and-so, Miss Member, come here, can you not, there's a length to a skirt and it's not this, right? He's never going to say that to a woman. What he's going to do is he's going to call me up and say, Kai, can you please talk to so-and-so? Okay, I've had 1 federal judge do it and 2 judges in our circuit call me up and ask me if I'll speak to another female lawyer because it's so uncomfortable for them. But they're wearing stuff it's just not right. It's indicative of another profession, not ours, right?
Well, but what about that? I'm going to challenge you.
Okay, go ahead and challenge me
you on this, and not because I'm all that, but because there is some notion out there that women should be permitted to project what they wish to project, and that if there's this moment where you're sexualizing a woman's expression through their attire, that's not coming from the woman, it's coming from the audience, right? And so isn't it gender to talk about, gendered in a way that we don't want to be, to talk about dress and to enforce certain norms on women that are sort of about projecting sexuality?
I see more young men projecting sexuality.
Well, tell me about
Well,
that.
we've got the skinny suits now. Skinny suits, really? I thought the Jonas Brothers, we ended that, right? There are men wearing skinny suits. I didn't even know until I saw the commercial that that's what they're called, right? Slim suits, skinny suits. But guys in tight suits.
Brian Buckmeyer wasn't there.
And quite frankly, they look good. I'm not going to say they don't.
He knows that.
They look good. Do you have one of those suits on? Do you have one of
I
those?
might have the jacket on.
You might have. It looks good. It looks good. I like I said, within the boundaries, if that's comfortable, knock it out. If you're a good-looking person and you feel comfortable in 6-inch stilettos, that's fine. But I mean, your skirt should cover certain things.
So how do you figure out what the boundaries are? You're talking about boundaries as though they exist. So
Well, my test, when I try a case, I imagine my mother and my priest, at one time that was the same person, but my mother and my priest are in the jury box. And if it's really bad, I imagine my grandmother sitting there. My grandmother's sitting there. So I can look nice and not offend my grandmother. I mean, I can. And guess what? There are going to be grandmothers on your juries, right? There are going to be cute little old ladies on your juries. There are also going to be 22-year-old people going, why is she wearing that? She looks frumpy, And then there's a whole demographic there for you. And if you're comfortable in what you're wearing and you know you wouldn't embarrass your grandmother, or Judge Apgar, whatever it may be. I mean, why embarrass you? Most of us have a sense of when we have crossed that line of embarrassing ourselves. I think. And maybe we don't, because that's why we're talking about some people in court every other week.
What they always said to me was, think about if you're walking out of court and you meet that client that you're the rainmaking client. Are you in something that you want he, she, them to see you in? And then you ask that question to yourself. I mean, it's the same thing. Is it something your grandmother would want you to see, or whatever? I mean, that's the kind of question. Is what do they what do you see yourself as? And if you're okay with it, they'll probably be okay with it.
The other point I was going to make, this might help, it might not, and that is maybe ask yourself when you are going to work, going to court, doing what you're doing, are you dressing for the occasion, or are you dressing for attention? And you can pretty much tell, and you probably have friends and coworkers now that you would say that they're dressing in a certain way just to get attention, just to turn the heads. And it may be not a short skirt, it may be something else. Like I knew this woman that would come in with fur all the time, and I mean, everywhere she went, she had this fur stuff and these long tails, and it was strange. It was, but it made everybody look, and everybody watched her come into the courtroom, and everybody watched her leave the courtroom. And that would be something that I would discourage, because I don't know why people do it. It perhaps is intended to be distracting and to enable you to get some attention, but I don't think it works very well. Now, I don't have jury trials, so when I have court, it's just before me, and I do try to just listen to what the parties are saying, and I really try to just filter out what they look like, because I've been in that situation, and I'm really trying not to think about what they wear. However, I will tell you that it's because what I do is bankruptcy, and we have different types of bankruptcy. You will see the contrast between the lawyers that make a lot of money and the lawyers that don't make a lot of money by the kind of suit they wear. And so sometimes my law clerks get a kick out of that, and they will talk about the suits. But I actually do try to focus on just what is said. And so I kind of feel sorry for people who come into court looking really foolish, because it doesn't make a difference to me, and I don't think it's going to make a difference in their case. And all it did is just make a lot of heads turn, and then people talked about the way that person was dressed instead of what they had to say. And I would just encourage you to not be the person that becomes the topic of conversation because of the way you were dressed, but instead because of the arguments that you made, because of the difference that you made in this project, because of the work that you did for your client, particularly your thoughts. That's, I think, going to be what's going to make you distinctive and potentially successful. But the other thing is that you want to be comfortable. And I'm from, I think I'm probably the oldest one, I am the oldest one on this panel. And so I actually remember what it was like.
I don't know, I graduated 1 year after you did.
After
I took
you?
a little time off. I'm an 89.
So I'm older than you are. So anyway.
Well, there's a gap in between college and law school.
So I remember the days in the 1970s when professional women had to look like men. And it was the boxy look. It was what I called like the military uniform. It's the male's uniform, it's just a skirt. And it was as boring and as ugly as possible. And I'll tell my pink suit story. Okay, so I was in college, and I had the opportunity to interview with, I can't remember if it was GE or it was a big 8 accounting firm, but anyway, it was a possibility of this job right after law school, right after undergrad, that was going to be a fantastic job for me. So I had 2 suits. I had the brown business suit, and it's the boxy, boring, ugly, looks like a man, only it's a skirt. And then I had a pink suit. Now this is your Easter Sunday feminine-looking suit, right? It's a I think they call it a tulip skirt or something like that, and no collar, fitted, had little pleats in the back, and got with it a top that had a collar that was frilly, I guess, and had a bow. At the time, that was the style.
She's telling the truth.
I love loved this. Okay, this happened to be something right off the rack. It fit. It was just perfect. And I loved it. And I remember talking to my parents. I had this job interview, and, you know, I have to wear that brown suit. You know, I'd really like to wear the pink suit, but I can't wear that for a job interview. And my father said to me, yes, you can. He said, you don't have to be a man to do the job. Therefore, you don't have to look like a man to apply for the job. He said, wear the pink suit. You like it, you look good in it, you feel good when you wear it, wear it. I wore it. I didn't get the job. But after that, I remember feeling like I wanted to wear something that made me comfortable and that I felt good wearing. Who cares what the color is? Who cares what the collar looks like? But I, of course, am not at the point where I have to worry about the other side, which is, I think younger professionals have to deal more with the other concerns, and that is, are you looking provocative? And that I would discourage, again, because the issue is, are you being understood for what you said? Do people note you because of your ideas or just because of what you wore?
I have a question for Abby, and because I can relate to this. I was 23 when I graduated law school, and you're a little older than I was, I think, but there's also the, how do I dress so I don't look like I'm a 17-year-old coming out of the office? Have you had any of that? I mean, because I felt like I had to play grown-up, essentially, for a couple of years.
Well, often when I put my suit on, I feel like I'm dressing up as like the Halloween attorney and not like the actual attorney. And sometimes going to court, people think I'm the court reporter and not the attorney, and that's disconcerting. But yeah, I think it's just how you carry yourself in general. If you have a certain purposeful poise about you, and you're not just sort of trudging along and dragging your knuckles on the ground, but you know, hold yourself up and just conduct yourself with some confidence, and it's almost, you can wear kind of the generic suit right off the rack, which is what I do. I, you know, just get whatever kind of is within your budget and just carry yourself as well as possible. I think dress wear at Gentry Lock is interesting because I feel like we are quite formal in Roanoke. I have a brother who works at a big firm in DC, and sometimes I'll see him at the end of the day if I'm up there visiting, and he's completely casual, and he says, yeah, you know, it's just, and it's a Thursday, and he's got slacks on, but he's definitely more casual than a Gentry Lock attorney in Roanoke. And sometimes I feel like the further you are away from a real bustling metropolis, the more you actually have to hold yourself out as like being dressed as an attorney. You know, it's almost assumed you're an attorney in DC or assumed that you're a politician. But in Roanoke, you kind of have to play the part a little bit, and so it's quite formal. And the other thing about being an associate, even at Gentry Lock and maybe elsewhere, is your goal on a daily basis is to be somebody that people want to work with. And anytime your dress sort of distracts from that or causes people to chatter about you or be uncomfortable working with you, you're taking away from that goal where you're just wanting to be the go-to person, and you don't want people to be whispering about you. You just want to be as approachable as possible because your work comes from your colleagues, your supervisors, and so you've got to wear yourself or wear something that's not going to be off-putting. But you got to be yourself, you know. There definitely are some style mavens roaming the halls of Gentry Lock. I kid you not. They have some real style. We have the managing partner of Gentry Lock is a woman. Her name is Monica Monday, and she's got style. So I'm always asking her where she gets her clothes. I don't quite have the purchase power yet to shop where she shops, but I do think she's got a lot of style. So, and it's interesting about Roanoke being somewhat more formal in the office.
Well, there's something to be said about ascertaining the norms in your community, and then if you're going to buck them, make sure you're doing that consciously, right, as opposed to accidentally, and ask yourself why you're doing that.
And I'll say a black suit and a pair of black slacks and a blue suit, like 3 suits and 5 tops. Nobody's going to notice if you wear the same thing every day for 6 months. Just make sure they're clean, and you can rewear a suit one day a week. I mean, build your wardrobe slowly. I don't drop $1,000 when you first get out of law school on a wardrobe. Get enough to get you through the week and do your laundry on a weekly basis, and you can get a lot of mileage out of a couple of things until you figure out what your style is and what your community is and what the expectations of you are.
So, what advice would you give any of the women that are in this room in the change talk? Do you have any questions? You guys have got a big fat F on the question asking. Go ahead.
So I see this discussion topic here that's professional self-determination. Is it them or is it me? What do you guys think about that question? Do you think it's women lacking ambition, or is it men not letting women sit at the table with them, or maybe a mix? Or we don't
No. Well, no, I think it's a really fair question because it's sort of what I was asking when I was talking about asking, right? About pursuing and asking and being ambitious. And I don't mean a big A male ambition, but knowing what you want and going after it. And, we aren't as good at tooting our own horn, right? I think to make a gross generalization. So what about it? And what is the challenge for us, and how do we overcome it? Is it them? Do we need to change them, or do we need to change us?
Well, I'll say no, we don't need to change them. The reason I would say that is because I think that if your focus is it's their problem and we need to change them, that's something that's just, it's going to potentially destroy you, because that's something that one individual just simply can't do. So I would just suggest be the best lawyer you can be. Number one, your education. Don't take it for granted. Be the best lawyer you can be, and you will be successful. And be careful that if you take your education for granted, and I'm probably not, probably none of you in this room would do so. But it's possible that someone can get their law degree and then simply forget to ever read the law or be effective in their field. And so then if you lose the case or you lose the client, it's because you messed up, because you weren't doing the legal work that was needed at the time, not because of your gender. All right? And so you want to be sure, first and foremost, that you are effective as a lawyer. Secondly, what I would say is continue to have professional associations with other women and with other professionals, men and women. And that's, again, how you learn how you can continue to develop professional progress. And as we were talking earlier, then more people will meet you and they will see your accomplishments, and they too will want to promote your accomplishments. Number 3, don't apologize for being a woman. Number 4, don't apologize for being a lawyer. And what I would say to that would be, or what I mean by that is, it is okay to be feminine. It's okay to wear the pink suit. It's okay to talk about your kids and the things that you like to do. And it's okay to be a really good lawyer. I would be cautious on assuming that the only reason why you didn't make it ahead is because other people had a different view of you. Do what you are comfortable with, and you will be successful. And finally, what I would just keep in mind is something what I would call it's okay to just go with it. And what I mean by that is, what if you are someone like me? I was quiet. I was not assertive when I was younger. And I was not inclined to sit at the table. I just wasn't. But that didn't mean that I didn't pursue a law degree. And that didn't mean that I didn't try to be the best lawyer that I could be. And in my own way, as a little bit more quiet, a little bit more, I guess, I was someone who perhaps was non-threatening to others. In that way, I found that I made connections that I may not have otherwise made. So you never know what your talent is going to be. And I would just go with it. What you're good at, what your nature is, that's okay. Don't apologize for it. If that's the way you are, there's still a place for you, and you still can be successful. And encourage each other, pursue your education, and the doors will open.
earn your capital, graduate, and work hard. I don't care who you are, whether you're a man or a woman, or you're married, or you have small kids, or you don't, go work hard. Okay, work-life balance doesn't mean you get to get a full wage and you get to work part-time and you're just not coming in on Tuesdays. That's not what it means. Earn your capital for a while. Earn your capital. And when you're earning your capital by working hard and doing the things that you're asked to do, at the same time, network, because if you're not invited to this table and there's not a seat at this table for you, there might be a seat at this table over here. Find your tables. It'd be great, right, at your 5-year mark to go, well, I've got invitations to 8 tables. Which one am I going to pick, right? Do that. Network and have those opportunities to be with people. Join organizations that are comfortable to you, the friends that are here, the WLSO, and then go out and join the VWAA or join a practice area group, join a local bar association where you can ascend to a leadership position, because you know what, you may feel like I'm floundering in my own firm, but I'm 5 years, I'm going to be head of the local bar association, so everybody else thinks I'm great, even if the 5 people at my firm don't think I'm so great, right? So there's a perception that you're a climber, you're going places. So earn your capital within your firm and then go do all those things. Every piece of work you have is an opportunity. When you are working with a partner, with a client, you have that opportunity with that client. You can either help that client be retained by this firm, there might be an opportunity to grow the business from that client, or that client may go, I love that Abby Murchison. We're gonna find something. Do you all do this? Yes. Abby's dad says so-and-so, or she gets it from somewhere else, and it comes to her, and guess what? She gets to go to the managing partner and go, Monica, you look fabulous today. I have a friend who was interested in this. Do you think our firm would be interested in accepting that book of business from IBM? Well, yes, Abby, we would. Okay? She didn't even have to do it, but the referral's there. So all of those things are there. The very best thing, I tripped into all the fortuitous things for me, but I was fortunate enough as a young lawyer to start to work on a book of business, and no one paid attention to what was going on. And so I took it, and I grew it, and then all the work started coming into me. And I'm a 4th-year associate, and I'm fully self-sufficient, and nobody noticed it was happening. Okay? And it was fortuitous. I just tripped into it. I didn't do anything. I tried to be the very best lawyer that I could be, and I was always prepared, and I was always asking what those needs were. And then that client led to another client, and by the 7-year mark, I'm kind of in control of my own destiny. If I want to stay, I'm going to stay on my terms. If I'm going to leave, I'm going to take that business with me. And that gives you the control to manage your world wherever it is you are. To manage your world and go, or to manage your world and stay. So the book of business comes from a million different sources, but whatever, either you might not be the person who does it all, but you might be the person who knows everybody. There's a value to all these things. You're the person that connects the dots and knows people here and knows people there, but get yourself out, get involved and get exposure. And I don't mean it just from a marketing standpoint. That was what I didn't see coming that came in through the back door, and I went, well, that's really neat how it happened that way. That's not why I did it. I did it because I got tremendous satisfaction. My best time was when I was volunteering and doing bar work, because in law school, until I did a clinical my 3rd year, it was the most selfish time of my life. And I felt like I was not a decent human being. And here I am training for this great, incredible profession. I'm giving nothing to anybody except me. That's not true. You all are being trained to be incredible servants in your community, and you're going to have an opportunity and an obligation to do that. And it feels great to do it, but then all this other stuff comes in. The village, the picking up the kids, the referrals over here, somebody calling you up and saying, have you ever thought about being a judge? No, not really, but thanks for the call. So, it makes you feel good, right? I mean, these are the things that happen by being authentic and doing all those things. But it all kind of fits in if you're willing to work hard and you're willing to earn your capital, but throw your net out and find out. And my thought when I had my sheet of paper was, that is the table where I'm going to sit. I was a contemporary of Monica. She was a year behind me. And I thought, that's the table where I'm going to sit. But I didn't want to sit there anymore after a certain period of time. But that was really not, so I evolved in that sense, evolved or changed or moved or whatever it might be. But I had the capital to stay, and I had the capital to leave. But I decided I thought that table was where I wanted to be, but I really like this table. Or look at that desk. Your tables are going to change, but make sure that, it's not always, in fact, I think it's rarely ever that we have this is what I'm going to do and this is where I'm going to go. It never kind of takes that path. It's God bless the broken road. And you'll get there, and it will be a great spot, wherever it is that you end up. But make those connections for a seat at a variety of restaurants. Okay?
The other thing you want to think about is don't necessarily think about it. Is it me or them mentality? Because if you go in and say, I'm going to screw the man, I'm going to show them what I'm going to do, then you're working on a goal that's not internal. Be the best lawyer you can be. Do the best work you can do. Be the best advocate for your clients that you can be. And the rest will shake out. My firm has partners who have been there, I think, since dinosaurs roamed the earth, all the way down to the management now, which is in the middle generation. But and it's amazing for me to see, and I can tell from talking with the older partners how much their perspective on practice has changed, just as they've watched the firm and law evolve around them, and the use of an email and the changes from one attorney and one assistant to everybody, using computers to the electronic age, and just all the changes. And with that comes the change in the structure of the workforce. More female attorneys, more female partners, and they just see them as just people. They're just a person in the office and an attorney, and it has, maybe that's not how they were 20 years ago. But thankfully, you guys are coming out of law school in a time when people like Kai and Judge Connolly and the women before them have blazed a trail. And we don't have to go through the pantyhose trail anymore. But being the best attorney you can be, and by not thinking, I'm going to do this to spite them, but I'm going to do this because this is what I want to be doing and I'm interested in it, is a positive versus negative attitude. And I guess that's the big thing is, I'm in the point in my career where I asked my boss about it. I don't know what I want to be when I grow up. I've got that basis, I've got the knowledge, I can not much surprises me in my specialty practice area of law, but what do I want to be when I grow up? And it sounds weird, but you'll get to that point where you've found the area of law you want to practice in, and you may be sitting here today saying, and I went to law school, I said, I'm going to be a corporate jockey. I'm going to sit behind a desk and I'm going to read documents all day long and I'm going to make sure the commas are in the right place. And it was not what I was meant to do. And so, if you have the ability and the flexibility when you leave law school, touch different areas of the law. Find out, you may have loved tax law in law school, and God bless you if you do, but you may end up being a litigator or insurance defense or family law or bankruptcy. Come join our bar. We have a lot of fun. Yeah, take it and learn with it. You have a great experience these first few years out to have some of that ability to say, hey, yeah, I've never worked on that, but please let me help you on that case, because this is the time in your career you have that flexibility to do so. Don't pigeonhole yourself on the way out, and don't pigeonhole yourself in thinking you have to fight the system. Go out and be the best attorney you can be, and by extension, I think things will reflect back on you in a positive way.
I'm going to say one more thing that might be shocking for you guys in the room. It's really cool to be a woman. It's super cool because you can go hang out with the women and you can go hang out with the men. And if you learn to swing a golf club and you play in a tournament, those guys are 90 yards behind me. Guess who's the most popular person on the golf team? Me. Because I can hit a sand wedge further than those guys can hit a driver into the woods, right? Pick up a golf club. Just learn to get off the tee. Because you can go drink beer and hit the ball far and mark it with men. But I get to go hang out with them, and then I can go hang out with the women, and then I can go market our firm to Walmart that really cares about diversity, and they very much like our law firm because we're a woman-owned business. Okay, so the clients are different than they used to be 20 years ago. We have women decision makers now. And guess what? They want to see you, Casey. They want to see you, right? They want to see you coming to market to them because you look like them. And they've thrown down 5 ladders, so they're glad you're there. So it's pretty cool to be a woman now. You get to you got a lot of tables to choose from. Sometimes I feel, you know, I see younger male associates, and I'm like, well, they don't get to hang out in the women's room with us. But, you know, they've kind of invited us into their club, but they can't really go to ours. So, it's neat. I think there's a benefit.
I want to talk about this. This is the last question I'm going to ask you guys, and then I'm going to ask Judge Connolly to give her concluding remarks because I know we're over time. The last question that we had on our list is one that actually concerns me, is it sort of riffs off what you're saying. And, you know, we encounter challenges. This whole community is in the midst of dealing with the challenge. Life is challenging. The practice of law is challenging. Life dishes out things that are hard for us to swallow. And I feel that the profession has changed since I came out of law school in 1989, for sure. And I'm just wondering, you know, what are some of the core strengths that we as women bring to the profession and to one another, and that we all can capitalize on as we face the challenges that we're going to face in our lives as professionals, whether they're purely professional, whether they're personal, whether they're just the bumps in the roads that we have to deal with. I mean, the profession looks different than it did when we started, certainly, Judge Connolly. And what have we done, and what can we continue to do for one another that's going to sort of play to those strengths, play to those things that we bring to the table?
Well, I would second what Kai was saying, and that is that, you know, you should first of all be proud of the fact that you are a woman. I mentioned the phrase "don't apologize for being a woman." We are very, very, very fortunate, and it's a blessing, and we should share with other professionals. We have the benefit of having an opportunity to share with other women professionals, and I think that's really fun. One of the reasons why this got started was Elizabeth talking with me about iWork, and this is an organization, International Women's Insolvency Restructuring Confederation. And it really, okay, it's a mouthful, but it's a bankruptcy lawyer women group. And as a bankruptcy lawyer in the western part of the state, it's somewhat isolating. There's not very many women bankruptcy lawyers in the western part of the state, and so there's a desire for you to want to get to know each other, and we sort of naturally ended up networking on our own, but then we want to meet other women, and it's because we share personalities and behavioral commonalities, and we also are serious about our profession. And that's just a wonderful opportunity that we have as women to gather in professional associations with other women. But, as Kai said, we also have the opportunity to gather with other professionals that's not gender-based. And that's a fantastic opportunity. I mean, we really have the best of all worlds. And so I would just cherish it and continue to honor it. I mean, this is important work that we do. It's good work, and it's important work. So I would stress that you do it and do it well. Appreciate what we have. Be kind to each other. You know, one topic we never touched on is there's a phrase that you hear from middle school girls called mean girl phenomenon. It can happen in the professional world. Let's not let that happen. Let's celebrate each other's talents and differences. Some of us may be quiet and not inclined to that table. We might want to go to this table, or we might be a little bit shy about getting to the table, and that's okay. You can still be a successful lawyer, and you can be a leader even if you're not the one sitting at the table. You might make the table a possibility. So I would just encourage you really to keep doing what you're doing. You're pursuing your education. You're coming to events like this, which is to encourage professional associations with other women, and you're improving yourself. And I think that I would just encourage you to continue doing exactly what you're doing.
All right.
Yeah, I mean, I think as women attorneys, we are systematically restoring the image of attorneys at large. I mean, lawyers are the butt of so many jokes, and here we are bringing such grace and creativity to the profession. So just realize that you're part of that, and embrace that, and especially as young attorneys, you're partnering, I think, with other young women out there that are bursting out onto the professional scene. And certainly in the Roanoke-Blacksburg corridor, there are a lot of technology companies. Some of them are being started by women, and I think they look to some of the women attorneys at Gentry Locke and some of the other law firms to sort of form a partnership to get their businesses going. And so reach out cross-pollinate with other professions, and just, bring your grace and creativity to the profession.
I think also the practice of law isn't a solo act. I mean, we say be the best lawyer you can be, but most of you will be in a firm or in a department somewhere. And remember that it's not just the lawyers in the office, it's the staff and the support staff. And to treat everyone with grace and respect the job that they do, respect the village that they have. I mentioned earlier about there's more attorneys on professional assistants these days, more requests and demands on paralegals, and I think most of those folks are going to be women in the office, and that's not always. There are male paralegals and male professional assistants, but there's just something about respecting everyone you work with, having a respectful office, as Abby said, with grace. Bring some class back to it, because it's really, when I have a pleading that had to be filed today, and I had to have the court call me back to give me a hearing date, and I was literally on my way, because I drove in from Richmond. I'm running out the office, going at my paralegal, going, when the court comes back, just put the hearing date in the motion and drop it in the filing, the great things a lot, and I was like, out the door. And I knew that because other days she's had to run out to get with her kids or whatever, and I've been able to handle something she had. She's not an attorney, but we have the same relationship, and I trust that she's going to file that for me, and I know she would trust for me to do that. And just having that kind of respect around, and building off what Kai said a little bit ago, you don't just want to be a cheerleader for the people in your firm, but be a cheerleader for people that you know and that you work with, and that you might be opposing counsel with it sometime, but hey, I was against Abby in this one case, and that she recently did this, and again, cheerlead as many people as you can. Let's don't be the mean girl. I guess that's the big thing. Don't be the mean girl, and because you get more you get more with honey than with vinegar, is the saying. It really is the underlying feeling, and I agree. It's kind of the best of both worlds. I work is about 2,000 women, but we do have men members, and I will tell you, they are some of the biggest cheerleaders in the organization. Are the men who have joined, or the men who just support. We have judges that come out and support, or practitioners that just come out and support our activities. And I will. One other thing I can agree with Kai on. My biggest marketing avenue in my first 3 years of practice was my driver, because I would go out and, like she said, you start 90 yards in front of everybody, and if you can hit a drive down the middle of the fairway, you've just put your team 120 yards ahead of everybody else. And I played in a competition like my second year in practice, and I won both of the long drive competitions, and I'm still known 8 years later for being the girl with the long drives. I haven't played golf in 4 years, people, they still remember it. So, talking with the boys and being just as good about tasting wine or meeting up on a women's event is that kind of diversity is something that you're so lucky to have available to you.
We're over, so we're going to be done. I want you to give our panel a hand, and then I'm going to ask Judge Connolly to come up here and give her complete remarks.
Thank you all. Thank you all, the panelists, for they all had to drive a distance to get here. Last fall, I was talking with Elizabeth Gunn, and I had another conversation with a woman, Jen McEmore, about IWORK, the International Women's Insolvency Restructuring Confederation. And we talked about wanting to expand the organization's presence in the Western District. We began talking about the need for networking, and how nice that would be to just do something. But of course, we go back to our busy lives, and the conversation ends. And then I had the opportunity to have a law intern, Laura Gass, who came to work in my office, and I would talk with her about this idea. And I know that it was an idea, but because of Laura, it became a reality, and it is the panel that we have tonight. And I wasn't sure that I was going to be able to go forward with this panel after Laura's untimely death on Tuesday. But I know that she would be tickled. She would be thrilled. She would be so excited about what we did today. And you could just see her sitting there, and she'd have her smile, that wonderful, engaging smile, and she would be thrilled. Laura was the one who got us to this point. Throughout the last several months, there were times when progress wasn't quite what it should be, and we weren't really certain whether the event would occur. But Laura had that forward ever, backward never, onward is the only way, and she made it happen. I am very grateful that we have gone ahead and done this, and I also think one of the things we need to think about with Laura is this event is something that she knew she was not going to sit at the table, but she made this event and the table a possibility. And so I know that it is Laura's leadership that made this occur. Laura was beautiful. Laura was happy. Laura was very smart. And she was an excellent intern. Many years ago, my daughter said to me, she was very little, she said, I don't want to be a lawyer when I grow up. When I grow up, I want to have a job that's fun. Well, if you know Laura Gass, you know that for her, working in the law was not fun. It was a blast. She loved it, and she was very happy. I want to thank you all for going forward tonight. I am very grateful that we're doing this, and we are doing this in her honor. When we gather, it will be also in her memory, and that's really important for many of us. It's really important for me. I think I need this as an opportunity to help comfort. It has been, it is very difficult. And I am grateful for this opportunity because we can comfort each other, and that is something that, as women, sometimes we can do quite well. But I also know that we will be honoring Laura, and I hope that all the comments that we shared today about pursuing our career and about being the best lawyer we can be, that is really the best way that we can honor Laura. So I thank you all, and I believe that we're going to have a reception and a dinner. And perhaps I can get some more details on that.
We have cookies and coffee and soda in the new courtroom lobby, and then we have the dinner at 7 o'clock tonight in Evans Hall.
So the dinner will be at Evans?
Evans Hall, yes.
Hall?
It's across the campus. I can give everybody who doesn't know directions.
Okay.